Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. Thanks for joining us for Alaska weather tonight on this 8th of March. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that a lot of different ways. The easiest is online at weather.gov/Alaska, which leads to all the different places to get your special type of weather information, whether it's the weather forecast that you find on your phone. Weather.gov/Alaska will take you to Fairbanks, Juneau, or Anchorage National Weather Service offices there to get your terminal aerodrome forecast there if you're taking off or landing somewhere special. If you want to give us a call at 1-800-472-0391, you can get information that way as well for your general day-to-day kind of weather. The main webpage, of course, takes you to the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit. If you're flying around, you certainly want to get your briefings there, and the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center just a click away, as well as the latest earthquake information and information about how to stay safe in tsunamis. If you can't find what you want, please let me know at david.snider@noaa.gov. I'd love to see your weather reports. I'd love to see your pictures, and love to get information from you and hear about how things are out in your part of Alaska. So drop me an email sometime when you get a chance. Here's a look at what's going on. We've got a lot to talk about around the Gulf Coast communities of Alaska. I'm going to start out west, though, and we'll come back to this. But first, probably the worst weather we have right now in Alaska is out here around King Salmon. In fact, the King Salmon Airport is down for the moment, and with blizzard conditions expected in the region, at least through tomorrow morning, chances are things aren't going to be moving around King Salmon, at least for the short time there. Heavy snow will continue in that region. It looks like we're going to see maybe as much as 6 to 11 inches of snow, additionally with perhaps another 14 inches in some areas around the Bristol Bay region. So a blizzard warning is in effect. Those winds will continue to gust up to 40, maybe 50 miles per hour in some cases there. So plan on poor conditions around Bristol Bay. That weather is also helping to feed in a chance of snow across South Central. A winter storm warning is posted for the eastern Kenai Peninsula region. That includes Portage, down to Moose Pass, Seward, and eastward toward Whittier. And this entire region here is kind of on the receiving end of some of that heavier snow. Wouldn't be surprised to see 1 to 2 feet in some cases, maybe even more across some of the higher terrain there, especially around the Moose Pass and eastward. So plan on some snow for Whittier, down towards Seward, Moose Pass, and Portage there. A lot of wind as well. A lot of that wind is going to be moving through the Portage Valley. Could have some sustained winds anywhere from about 40 to 55 miles per hour. So plan on some strong wind in that region. Now on the other side, a winter weather advisory is posted for the western Kenai Peninsula. We're looking at lesser amounts of snow there, probably on the order of about 3 to 7 inches there. And also up around areas in the Susitna Valley, generally south of Squetna, expecting some decent snow there, but again, not the big heavy stuff there, about 3 to 7 inches or so possible in your region. Also talking about wind across the Alaska range, for the Denali region, a wind advisory will continue until tonight and early tomorrow morning. For the eastern Alaska range, we expect that to continue at least through the afternoon tomorrow. Those winds up to about 40 to 50 miles per hour at times, maybe a little bit stronger, some gusts to 60. Don't be surprised to see that continue there. But again, the wind advisories should peel off from west to east as we go through the daytime tomorrow. Now, for southeast, you've had a winter storm watch, and that can go two ways. It can go to the lesser warning or advisory, and that would be a winter weather advisory at this point. Or if it's going to be a lot worse, it would be a winter storm warning. At this point, it looks like it's going to be the lesser of the two. However, that doesn't mean weather isn't happening. In fact, it is happening. So an advisory is the next step, and that means that many cases there from Cape Weather to Cape Fairweather to Cape Suckling, as well as areas around Haines, Skagway, Juneau, looking at least some snow accumulation, probably on the order of about 3 to 7 inches in general. But there's also going to be some wind with that, and we expect that, especially around the Haines Highway, the Klondike Highway, the White Pass region, you're talking about gusts that could reach upwards of 35 to maybe as strong as 50 miles per hour. So it's going to make driving kind of difficult there. This will all happen ahead of a front that's moving in, and then after that passes, conditions will settle out. But after the front, there's going to be enough upward moving air, enough convection and lift in the atmosphere, enough instability there for the weather to keep happening. So just because the front moves through, and typically that means things are going to settle out a little bit. In this case, it might not. So you may actually get some more heavy snow showers after that main wave passes and you get a little bit of a break. So plan for some inconvenient weather perhaps tomorrow, especially if you're in Juneau. If you're watching in Juneau tonight, everything's going to kind of come in, especially during the morning commute. So if you have the opportunity to kind of maybe shift your schedule a little bit tomorrow, you might want to keep an eye on the weather and plan accordingly there. Could see about 3 to 7 inches in town with some of the heavier stuff during the morning commute. So interesting times there for southeast and of course many out in southwest as well. Now as we look up toward Kotzebue Sound and the Bering Strait, winter weather advisories are posted there. That's mainly due to wind blowing snow around. It looks like gusts anywhere from 40 to 50 miles per hour will be possible in your region. Look for those advisories to continue through tonight and into early tomorrow morning. So again, winter weather advisories for the Bering Strait region, including St. Lawrence Island and the western tip of the Seward Peninsula, as well as the Chukchi Coast around Point Lay there. A lot of wind moving through as we head through the next 24 hours. And once again, the blizzard warning continues until early tomorrow morning for the Bristol Bay region, and that includes King Salmon again, where the airport as of late afternoon was shut down. Not good. Here's a look at the satellite picture, and you can see, I think, the bright white pinwheeling clouds we have moving across the Bering. In fact, as of about around 2 o'clock this afternoon, you can see the center of low pressure there, very close to St. Matthew. We also have another low around south central. That one was moving over Kodiak Island. And the really big part of this that really jumps out at me are the speckled area of cumulus clouds. That trail that you see here tells me there is a lot of cold air wrapping into this system, and that is just feeding into the blizzard potential here around Bristol Bay. Now, all of this is sliding eastward, and that's what the folks in southeast are preparing for tonight. Periods of heavy snow may be possible with that, so winter weather advisories have been posted for some parts of the north. And this is what's moving through south central and just going to pound the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula and western sections of Prince William Sound as we go through the next 24 hours. There's our low. Not a really deep low, but deep enough, huh? 980 millibars there. We have a trough extending out across the eastern Gulf, some pockets of rain here and there, but the really big part of the storm is across south central and the central interior as we go through today. Periods of heavier snow will be on the back side of this. That's pretty typical. And areas of light snow across the Alaska Peninsula with kind of a tightening pressure gradient here. Low pressure just north of Nunivak Island, 978 millibars, and that's pushing a front in across Kotzebue Sound, another frontal boundary. It kind of stopped and parked right across the North Slope, helping to keep wind moving across the North Slope communities as well. You'll notice not a whole lot of movement overnight. In the next 12 to 24 hours, the folks that are getting snow are going to keep getting snow. And here comes the front for southeast as that moves into early tonight and early tomorrow morning. That's going to really focus in on passing through the Juneau region again right around the morning commute. So plan for that. A pretty tight pressure gradient across the Bering Strait, across the Alaska Peninsula and the central and eastern chain. This is a lot more showery out here, so not a steadier snow like what we're seeing here closer to the core on the western side of the low pressure system. But do notice the low is dropping. It went from about 980 to 964, so pretty substantial drop in pressure there as we go into just the next 12 hours. By Friday, those areas of low pressure kind of combining into one at 979 millibars there. You can see it hasn't moved a whole lot, and that's going to keep focusing that snow into Prince William Sound and the eastern Kenai Peninsula. The front has passed now through southeast, but we still have an opportunity for wind and snow, especially across the northern parts of southeast. Along the outer coast and the southern third, might be dealing with more of a rain and snow mix there, and some of that will certainly, most of it really, will be more showery in nature than kind of a steady snow like we were talking about to get started. Up north, notice the tight pressure gradient for places like Ambler and all the way out to the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, down into the central Koyukuk Valley and westward. A decent amount of wind flowing through there, probably not anything really horrible, but enough to blow the snow around. So plan on some poor visibility from time to time. Through the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island, the pressure gradient is pretty tight as well. Those northerly winds are going to stay with it. Out across the Alaska Peninsula and central chain, snow showers still in your forecast for Friday. As we get into Saturday, you'll notice the next system in this progression of constant weather waves is marching through. That makes it into about 992 millibars, still well west of St. Matthew and the Pribilofs. Enough warm air is traveling with us on the south side to bring up rain into central parts of the Aleutians, including Adak and Atka. You'll see more snow and rain mix probably around Nikolsky, Dutch Harbor, and Unalaska. And snow showers continue around south central. Low pressure's filling in now, so not quite as strong as it was, but it's still there. And across southeast, warmer weather quickly jumping northward. perhaps spreading some rainfall into central and southern parts of southeast. Up north, we'll see how fast that cold air leaves, but still could be some heavier snow up across the higher terrain, White Pass, Klondike Highway regions. And snow showers continue for the central interior there. I expect a little bit of that on Saturday, as well as clouds fairly persistent across the west coast. Snow showers continue for Norton Sound, Golovin, out across southwest. And don't be surprised to see a little bit of wind with that, but certainly not the big snow and the big wind that we've been dealing with for the last couple days. As we get into temperatures in the morning, look for readings in the teens from the middle Tanana Valley westward toward the YK Delta. Norton Sound, Unalakleet, you're looking at 15 for Galena as well. Nome, about 12. Overnight lows across the North Slope, anywhere from 5 to 10 below. South Central in the 20s. Kodiak near 30 degrees. Around the Alaska Peninsula and west, upper 20s and lower 30s. There's southeast, lower to mid 30s for many locations there. High temperatures in the morning across the North Slope, still in the single digits there, a little bit closer to normal, at least for this time of the year. Upper 20s and lower 30s for the middle Tanana Valley, warming up there, and for South Central. Notice Talkeetna is coming up above freezing. Southeast, 30s to 40 degrees around Sitka, 35 around Kodiak, and lower to mid 30s for many across the Alaska Peninsula. St. Paul and St. George in the upper 20s. Bristol Bay still in the mid 20s there. Overnight lows for Saturday, cooling down across the interior, single digits and low teens for many in the west. Bristol Bay, low teens. South Central, teens and 20s. Southeast, generally lower to mid 30s there. North Slope temperatures go sub-zero. Watch for a quick rebound to about zero for Saturday afternoon. South Central holding near freezing.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather now, you'll notice widespread areas of IFR across the west coast as low pressure is working its way across the Gulf. It's also adding moisture and low ceiling and visibility to many across the north and eastern Gulf Coast. Widespread IFR across the southeastern Panhandle, as well as the western Alaska Range, the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, the North Slope, pretty much from tip to tail, and across the YK Delta and over the Pribilofs and the eastern chain. As we get into the afternoon, you'll see some improvements in southeast. Watch for MVFR to linger across the central and southern Panhandle. IFR conditions across some of the higher terrain for south central, especially the Prince William Sound side and eastern Kenai Peninsula, around Bristol Bay all the way to Lake Iliamna and westward into the Yukon Delta, and then also across the North Slope. Many across the interior will see generally improving conditions through the rest of your Friday afternoon. For Saturday, watch for hit and miss IFR across the interior, a lot of that close to some of the higher terrain. Across southwest, you'll see IFR spreading inland through the YK Delta and into Bristol Bay from Port Hayden all the way down to Cape Sarachef, and then westward all the way north of the eastern Aleutian chain. MVFR for the Pribilofs, and look for IFR conditions around St. Lawrence Island. And we'll continue to see IFR across the north and eastern Gulf Coast and MVFR where that's not present. For Saturday afternoon, IFR conditions will continue across parts of the North Slope, but you will see improvement around Kaktovik and then south and west of Point Hope and Point Lay into Kotzebue Sound and Norton Sound. VFR conditions should prevail for all of your Saturday afternoon flying. Look for improvements across the interior and for southwest, but MVFR may still be found across the western Alaska Range and parts of the Chugach into Prince William Sound. IFR continues to be an issue around parts of southeast and certainly across the western and central chain for your Saturday. Here's your pass conditions then for your Friday. Aniktuvic Pass expecting to see improvements as the day goes on. VFR to MVFR conditions there. MVFR conditions are expected to continue for Friday in Adigan Pass as we go through the day there. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass expecting to see IFR conditions through most of your Friday. Same goes for Rainy Pass. Windy Pass also expected to be IFR through most of the day. Isabel Pass looking for IFR with improvements to be had by the afternoon there to MVFR conditions. VFR expected to increase as we get into Metasta Pass, and for Tanita Pass also looking for IFR conditions in the morning, but improvements expected through the day. Portage Pass, IFR conditions there. Winter storm warnings in effect this afternoon. We expect conditions to gradually improve as we head through the weekend, but right now IFR conditions expected for your Friday. Same goes for Chilkoot and White Pass. Freezing levels indicate not a whole lot of upper level warming passing into the region. A lot of that's just south of Haida Gwaii trying to work its way into southeast. That will continue to be the case as we go into the weekend, but for right now the broad area of the mainland is certainly below freezing, and you can see that surface freezing line south of Prince William Sound hovering right over southeast, south of Kodiak Island, and right over Sand Point and areas out around Cold Bay and Falls Pass. Icing potential is wrapping around low pressure again across the northern Gulf, so you can see some changing levels here across the north and west. Expect that to continue to be the case as we go into your Saturday and Sunday. For the eastern Brooks Range, generally below 2,000 feet, and then you have to climb back up above 4,000 feet to run into at least some isolated moderate here. Across the west coast, below 8,000 feet, and those levels get lower as you get closer to low pressure. So around around Bristol Bay, you're looking around 6,000 feet there, so levels are dropping as you go down the west coast. Above 4,000 feet across south central and parts of the Glen Allen region, the Copper River Valley, and then across southeast, generally above 8,000 feet. So there's plenty of moisture, not a whole lot of really substantial warm air, but certainly some pockets of drier air that are affecting the icing potential there. Jet stream has our broad trough coming off of eastern Asia, dipping across the Bering Sea and then into the Gulf. Low pressure sitting very close to Kodiak Island for Friday and south of the Alaska Peninsula. That's giving a broad southwesterly flow into the Pacific Northwest and parts of southeastern Alaska with wind speeds there at 110 knots. The northerly flow across the Bering up to 165 knots as it's crossing the Aleutians. So low pressure is sitting just west of Cook Inlet, north of Kodiak Island. A broad southerly flow for the eastern Gulf, northerlies for the west coast, easterlies for the north slope, and southerlies coming into south central. You can see the greatest wind speeds across the west coast around 40 knots or so. Strong southerlies in the western Bering, strong southerlies across the eastern Gulf up to 20 to 25 there at 3,000 feet. We keep our northerlies here at 20 to 30 knots across the west coast, and stronger southerlies coming into southeast. Easterlies over the Brooks Range anywhere from 15 to 20 knots. So turbulence is really going to focus across the Alaska Peninsula all the way at the chain below 4,000 feet. Watch for considerable moderate across the North Gulf Coast, north of Sitka and over Kodiak Island, and isolated across most areas in the interior. Be back with a look at your Marines in just a few minutes.
Canis Major and Canis Minor.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. Dean and I often talk about Orion the Hunter, but rarely do we ever get to talk about his two dogs, Canis Major and Canis Minor.
That's right, James. After Orion was stung by Scorpius the Scorpion, he was placed in the sky. However, like most dog lovers, Orion was lonely without his beloved hunting dogs. So Zeus placed his dogs in the sky to keep him company. Let's show you.
Okay, we have our skies set up for about an hour after sunset any night this week, facing south. High in the sky, you'll see the familiar stars of Orion the Hunter. The three stars forming his belt make him easy to find.
To find Canis Major, use Orion's belt and start with the star on the far right. That star is Mintaka. Then draw a line from Mintaka through Alnilam and Alnitak and keep going. And you'll run smack dab into the brightest star in the night sky. That star's name is Sirius.
Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky because it's relatively close to us. At roughly 8 light years away, Sirius definitely makes its presence known. You can often see Sirius twinkling brilliantly in the southern sky.
The name Sirius comes from the Greek word for scorching, and it's actually a binary star system. The companion star, Sirius B, is a white dwarf with an orbital period of almost 50 years. Sirius A and Sirius B had their smallest angular separation from each other back in 1993. The greatest angular separation will happen between 2020 and 2025.
Now for the other stars in Canis Major. Up and to the left of Sirius, we have Mulliphane, a blue-white giant star 441 light-years from Earth. And on the other side of Sirius, we have Mirzam. Mirzam is 500 light-years away, and its name means the announcer, because from most locations, it rises just a few minutes before Sirius.
Just to the south and east of Sirius, you'll see a small triangle of stars which mark the hindquarters of Canis Major. The star at the top of the triangle is named Wezen, a yellow-white supergiant about 1,600 light-years from us.
This star's name means the weight, and for good reason. Wezen is massive. It's 17 times the mass of our Sun, over 50,000 times as bright, and its diameter is the same as the orbit of the Earth. Therefore, if it took the place of the Sun in our solar system, we would be skimming across its surface.
Just to the left of Wiesen, we have the star Aludra. Aludra is even brighter than Wiesen, but only half its diameter. Aludra is a blue-white supergiant shining over 176,000 times as bright as our sun and is a whopping 2,000 light years away.
The other star in the triangle is Adhara. Today, Adhara is 430 light years away, but almost 5 million years ago, Adhara was close enough to the Earth to be the brightest star in the night sky, dramatically outshining Sirius and even rivaling the brilliance of the planet Venus.
All right, let's now talk about Orion's other hunting dog, Canis Minor.
This should be easy. Canis Minor only has 2 stars.
Well, 2 that you can see from most major cities. Believe it or not, this tiny constellation has over 50 stars.
No way.
Yes way. Now, granted, many of those stars are dimmer than 4th magnitude. Nevertheless, they're up there.
To find Canis Minor, take Orion's shoulder stars Bellatrix and Betelgeuse and draw a line toward the east, and you'll run into the 2 stars Procyon and Gomesa. Procyon is the brighter of the 2 and is only 11 light years from us.
Gomesa is 162 light years away and is 195 times as bright as our sun, with a surface temperature of over 20,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow, 20,000 degrees. I guess you could say Canis Minor is a really hot dog.
Anyway, get outside tonight and check out Orion's 2 hunting dogs in all their celestial splendor.
It's easy to do when you keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time for a quick check of your sea ice edge, and with southerly winds we continue to see the erosion of that most southerly edge of ice across areas near St. Lawrence Island, north of Nunivak Island, and across the YK Delta coastline. You can even see some patchy areas of lower concentration ice below 80% north of the Yukon Delta itself. Some higher concentration ice still found across the Bering Strait, but again, a lot of warm weather has been pushed into the region, so don't be surprised to see conditions that are unusual and atypical for this time of the year. You can always get the latest information on your sea ice anytime at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. On to southeast now. Going to have a lot of wind moving through the region, especially as that front is passing through tomorrow morning. For many in the Juneau area, that's going to stir up the snow for you around commute time as well. A south and southeasterly flow working up the inner passage, anywhere from 25 to 40 knots sustained. Some higher gusts possible, especially around some of the passes as well. An onshore flow across the outer coast brings seas up to about 13 feet down south, 19 feet up north, and a steady wind around 20 to 30 knots across the outer coast. That'll parallel the coast a little bit more on Saturday. A south and southeasterly flow there as strong as 25 knots near the Dixon entrance. The inside passage, the winds start to lay down just a little bit. It's still around 15 knots with 3 to 6 foot seas the further south you go. For south central, look for southeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound, 30 knots with 6 foot seas, 21 to 23 foot seas across the northern Gulf. For the southern Cook Inlet, look for 25 to 30 knots. Those wrapping around low pressure as it's moving away from Kodiak Island. Look for strong westerlies over the Barrens, 30 to 35 with 11 to 18 foot seas there on Friday. For Saturday, northerlies develop, 15 to 25 knots expected through Cook Inlet. Higher seas south of Kenai, anywhere from 5 foot seas there to 7 foot seas east of the Barrens. And an east and southeasterly flow across the northern Gulf, winds around 15 to 25 knots. Inside of Prince William Sound, 20 knots with a 4 foot sea on Saturday. A lot of wind and higher seas across the southern Bering Sea. Northwesterlies at 40 knots with 28 foot seas there. Anywhere from 30 to 40 knots across the northern and western parts of the Gulf into the North Pacific. 30 to 40 knot wind should bring seas up to about 15 to 20 feet. Inside of Shelikof Strait, 6 foot seas, 30 knot winds. There could be some higher seas and winds in some of the more constrained gap areas there. So keep watch on that. Northwesterlies continue to be strong inside of Bristol Bay, 35 knots with a 13 foot sea. Things start to improve as we get into Saturday. 25 to 30 knots across the Bering Sea coast, 9 to 19 foot seas the further south you go. You can see the higher seas there generally south and west of Cold Bay and Sandpoint north of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. Easterlies east of Kodiak Island, 4-foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait. North and northwesterlies there down the Pacific coast 25 to 30 with seas from 10 to 13 feet. Once again, higher seas across the central and eastern chain, anywhere from 40 to 45 knots. Storm force winds out there for sure, and cranking up the seas anywhere from 30 to 32 knots north of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. You're looking at 21 to 27 foot seas across the central and eastern chain on the Pacific coast. And those higher seas extend north and west with that strong and driving wind. Remember, low pressures to your east here, creating blizzard conditions around King Salmon tonight. West and northwesterlies for the central and eastern chain for Saturday, looking for 15 to 20 foot seas, anywhere from west to northwesterly winds across the Pacific coast, expecting 12 to about 14 foot seas. They're north or southwesterlies, I should say, across the west coast, anywhere from 15 to about 16 foot seas. On 30 to 35 knots from the south and west. For Friday, north and northwesterly still wrapping in a low pressure, holding around Kodiak Island, anywhere from 25 knots over the ice with a northerly flow to northwesterlies around St. Matthew, St. Paul, and St. George, expecting about 18 to 26 foot seas in that region, 15 foot seas south of Nunivak Island. As we get into Saturday, again, the wind should start to lay down just a little bit north and northwesterlies down the YK Delta coastline. For the Pribilofs, 25 knots with a 14-foot sea. Northeasterlies around the Pribilofs, 30 knots with 11-foot seas there on Saturday. And for the North Slope, look for a north and easterly wind. That's going to keep wind advisories going, blowing snow, especially around Point Hope to Point Lay and through the Bering Strait. Some areas of open water north of St. Lawrence Island, 13-foot seas there with that 30-knot wind as we get into Saturday. Not a big change there for most of the Bering Strait, 25 to 30 knots most areas. Easterlies across the Beaufort Seacoast, around 20 knots, generally blowing in throughout most of the day. Let's recap your weather tonight. Blizzard warnings for the Bristol Bay region. Those go until early tomorrow morning. Winter weather advisories for the Juneau region all the way up through Haines and Skagway and through Cape Suckling and Cape Fairweather. Expecting at least 3 to 7 inches of snow in those regions and wind to go along with it, especially as that front is moving through early in the morning. Winter weather advisories generally south of Skwentna for the Susitna Valley, and a winter storm warning for the eastern parts of the Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound, a winter weather advisory for the western Kenai Peninsula, and winter weather advisories up north around the Bering Strait. Have a safe Friday. See you next time.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.